In today's lesson, we're going to talk about dividing fractions. Now, dividing fractions is actually very similar as when we multiply fractions, as you'll see. Now, remember that dividing is the opposite of multiplying. We've talked a lot about opposite operations. Addition is the opposite of subtraction, and dividing is the opposite of multiplying. So if we take 3 times 4, we know that equals 12. We can also say 12 divided by 4 equals 3. We talked about this when we were talking about fact families. All right, so we could organize 3 candies into 4 groups to make 12 candies, which is 3 times 4. That gives us 12. Or we could divide 12 candies into 4 groups of 3 and get 12 divided by 4, which equals 3 candies in each group. And either way, they basically mean the same thing. Okay, so we have the same idea. Well, we know that dividing is the reverse of multiplication, and this concept applies to fractions as well, and fact families, as you'll see. So let's say we want to multiply 1/3 by 3. So to visually demonstrate this, we're going to take our whole, which is our rectangle. We're going to divide it into 3 equal pieces. That's what this 3 tells us. And then we are going to shade one of them, and that's what the numerator tells us. So this represents 1/3, right? So we could start with our 1/3, and we want to multiply it by 3. And if you'll recall, multiplication is simply repeated addition. So we would actually have 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. So we saw that this picture represented 1/3. So we have 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. Well, what does that equal? Well, if we take each of these thirds, we can put them together and they give us 3/3 or 1 whole. So 1/3 times 3 equals 1. All right? So we can reverse this equation using division to show the same thing. So we're going to create our fact family, including with fractions this time. All right, so 1/3 times 3 equals 1, or we could take 1 whole, divide it into 3 equal pieces, and each piece would represent 1/3. So then if we have 1/3 times 3 equals 1, then 1 divided by 3 equals 1/3. Now, did you notice something interesting? Notice that 1 divided by 3 is the same thing as 1/3. Well, this is true for all fractions. 1 divided by 4 equals 1/4. 1 divided by 16 equals 1/16. And the fraction symbol, which is this line right here, it can simply be interpreted as division. So 1 divided by 16. Now, it doesn't, all of these examples have a 1 as the numerator, but it doesn't matter what the numerator is. It still means the same thing. The numerator divided by the denominator is the same thing as writing it in this way. So the numerator over the denominator means the numerator divided by the denominator. So in this case, we've got 1 divided by 16. Now complete this fact family for this expression, 2/3 times 3, but we want to complete it using division because we have the multiplication. So the very first thing we've got to do is we have to complete this first equation, before we can do the division equation. So we're going to change the whole number to a fraction, and then we're going to multiply. So we multiply our numerators, 2 times 3, which gives us 6. And then we do multiply our denominators, which is 3 times 1, which gives us 3. So 2/3 times 3 gives us 6/3. And we can simplify this because if you'll recognize 3 and 6 are factors of 6. So we can divide 6 by 3, which is 2, and 3 divided by 3, which is 1. And 2/1, as we learned last lesson, is the same thing as saying simply 2. So now we can replace our question mark with a 2. So 2/3 times 3 is equal to 2, which also means that we can take 2 divided by 3 and we get 2/3. So 2 divided by 3 equals 2/3, 2/3. So this right here represents our fact family with this fraction. So write 4 divided by 5 as a fraction. Now when we divide 2 whole numbers, we can write it as a fraction with the dividend as the numerator and the divisor as the denominator. So let's see how this works. So 4 divided by 5, this is our dividend, so we're going to write that as our numerator. and then we're going to write our divisor as our denominator. So you can see, as I said before, that the numerator does not have to be a 1. You always take the dividend divided by the divisor, and you get your fraction, all right? Now, I have 3 different chocolate bars that I want to share equally with my brother so that we can each taste all 3 chocolate bars. All right, so I've got 3 different chocolate bars, and I'm going to, and I want to share them equally. So I want to divide them into equal portions. So I'm going to write, I'm asked to write a multiplication and division equation that would demonstrate how many pieces of chocolate I have. All right, so here's my 3 original chocolate bars. I'm using different pieces or colors to differentiate between each. So the first thing I've got to do is I've got to cut each of them into 2 equal pieces. So I'm cutting them in half because I want to share them with my brother, and I want each of us to have the same amount. So I divide them in half, and I can see that this is my portion. Okay, these 3 pieces are my portion, and these 3 pieces belong to my brother. That's what I'm going to give him. How many pieces of chocolate do I have? Well, I know that each of these pieces represents a half of the original chocolate bar. So I have 1/2, 1/2, and 1/2. So I have 3 half bars. All right, so I have 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2. So another way that I could write that is I've got 3 times a half, right? Because remember that multiplication is simply repeated addition, which is what I have here. So I'm adding 1/2 3 times. All right, so we could demonstrate this with division. So 3 times a half is equal to 3 over 2. And remember, because we can simply write 3 over 1 and then multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. So from our last example, we know that the numerator can be written as the dividend and the denominator can be written as the denominator. So write the numerator as the dividend. That's this guy right here. So 3 divided by, and then we divide by the divisor, which is 2. So 3 divided by 2 is equal to 3 over 2, and we read this as 3 halves. So we can say that 3 chocolate bars divided between 2 people means that each person receives 3 halves. All right, so we each have the same amount. We have 3 halves of the chocolate bars. And that's your lesson on dividing fractions.